Hey, Washington, welcome to your AA hole. Still pointing fingers as investors just point to the exits. Welcome, everybody. I'm Neil Cavuto, and they ding us. Investors leave us after the S&P cut, the Wall Street cut, and run. Fox on top of stocks going down, way down, and nothing getting them to move up. Not even the President of the United States appearing before the nation to try and calm them down.
We didn't need a rating agency to tell us that we need a balanced, long-term approach to deficit reduction.
As for all the president's talk of working with the other side now, is he still continuing to blame the other side? And in the case of Standard & Poor's, grill them as well. Reports this evening the Senate Banking Committee is looking into the S&P downgrade and how that came about. All right, two quick things I noticed going back in time here. Back a dozen years ago, I had a better toupee. It came up right away. The other was how we did this 12 years ago and learned nothing from it. And we're witnessing it again. What I was referring to is S&P at that time in 2011 downgrading our AAA rating. A lot of people thought it would be the end of the world and they would quickly ratchet that rating back up to AAA. They never have in all those dozen years. Along comes Fitch Investors to say, we're going to make good on another threat as well that we kind of signaled back in May. Also ding our AAA rating. That leaves Moody's the only other major ratings agency that has not downgraded us. But the reasons then and the reasons now are essentially the same. Our finances are a mess. And these government shutdowns and threats of shutdowns and working through them are beginning to be a joke. It was then, is now. What is interesting to note here is we tend to get through this stuff. So you can always sound like the boy who cried wolf, saying that we can't keep getting through this stuff. Enter David Dodson, one of the smartest professors I know, Stanford Graduate School of Business, what he makes of that. Dave, it is interesting, right? When I was looking back at that and some of our coverage at the time, you know, a lot of people are saying, well, this will be a powerful lesson for us. We'll get our house in order. You know, we won't bring, you know, the nation's finances to a brink ever again. By my count, we have at least 30 times. So what happened?
Neil, you and I were on parallel tracks this morning because I was doing exactly the same thing looking back a dozen years ago. And it really left me thinking that there's something silly and something serious about what happened this week. The silly thing is that it took them a dozen years to figure out what anyone who's living on this planet knows, which is that we spend more money than we take in and we have no plan. And when it happened a dozen years ago, the stock market panicked and then went right back to normal. And that's exactly what's going to happen this time. Because where are you going to take the money? You're going to take it out of treasuries and do what with it? You're not going to put it into banks. And there's only two other major economies, Singapore and Germany, that have a AAA rating. So there's no place to put the money other than the U.S. So it's going to have, in my mind, no effect on day-to-day investments.
Dave, to that point, just to clarify, we are a haven. I understand that. We always have been. We make good on our commitments. People know when things get dicey, they park their dough here. But the more these kind of things happen, maybe the less they'll think of that. There are already countries that are trying to come up with an alternative to our dollar and enticing alternatives to our markets. Do you think they'll ever succeed?
Yeah, and that's where the serious part comes in, is that there is signaling there when you go from AAA to AA+. The distinction is actually not very big, but the signaling is important. And the thing that confuses me, Neil, is why it took us a dozen years to discover, for Fitch to discover what everyone's known, which is that we are in a mess fiscally. And what I'm hoping is that this signaling will say to politicians or say to Americans that anybody who is interested in talking seriously about the debt has to put on the table either taxes, military, or entitlements, Social Security and medical spending. If you're not willing to put that on the table, then you either are not serious about deficit reform or you flunked third grade math.
But you know, third grade math or not, it's the third rail of politics to even think about addressing entitlements that simply are not mathematically sustainable. This isn't a political point, it just is. And yet, the two leading candidates for president don't want them touched. Now, I can understand politically why that makes perfectly good sense. But the American people then are being led to believe all is right, you know, nothing to see here, move on, but all is not right.
That's right. And that's why I'm hoping on the serious side of what happened this week is that it brings up to the surface that we have a fundamental problem. It has nothing to do with any one administration or any one Congress. This has been going on for 25 years. And 25 years ago, it was fairly easy to address. Every year that we kick the can down the alley, and every year that a congressman says, I'm more interested in getting elected in 2 years than I am taking care of my children and my grandchildren, the problem gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So what I'm hoping is that in its own way, the credit agency shined a light back on something that we have got to be paying attention to. And it is the third rail, but it's a third rail at our peril, Neil, right? Because the real third rail
you're right.
is when we run out of money. And these numbers that we see in the deficit are understated because the actual true gap between the present value of what we owe and what we have in currently is another $30 trillion.
It's staggering. You know, think about it, Dave. We owe more than we're worth as a country. That is just
Absolutely.
mind-blowing. Dave, thank you, I think for that. But you're right to warn us about it.